Okay. Okay, ring the bells, ring the bells. It's time to talk Game of Thrones, Season 8, Episode 5, the penultimate episode of the series. And we're here at Gold Derby to break down the episode, what happened, give a bit of a recap, and recap also its award prospects moving forward. And I just got to kick things off today, guys. By the way, I'm Matt Noble, here with Luca and Riley, as always.
Hello.
And I just got to start off with Daenerys Targaryen, the worst move in Game of Thrones history, torching King's Landing, bringing it down to the ground. By the way, spoiler alert, there's going to be spoilers. Okay, she won the battle easily, despite, for 2 weeks us being told oh, look, it's so even. Troops are so even. This is going to be a very tough fight. She pretty much demolishes all the scorpions, all the crossbows, all the Acme company contraptions. She burns to the ground. They've won the war. The soldiers surrender is the right word. The bells get rung, which she has been told means that they've surrendered. King's Landing is hers for the taking. The Iron Throne, I would imagine also the way she won that battle with the dragon, unquestionably to those in Westeros and those in the north, she was able to defeat Cersei Lannister. I think that would get her some goodwill. That would put her in a good position. And she decides, I'm going to throw that all away. I'm going to... Now, I know she's got in her head that she'll probably still be able to rule, but I don't see how she gets out of next week's episode alive next week. And all she needed to do was take the Iron Throne without torching those innocent civilians, and she probably wins the Game of Thrones. Yeah. Luca.
So, yeah, after the episode, I was, just as mad as she was in the episode. But now that I've had, 2 days to think about it and 2 days to read through reviews and see what other people are saying, I'm starting to I'm starting to understand the decision. I still don't like it, but I don't think it's a surprise. I think there were a lot of hints throughout the last few seasons that she was going to become the Mad Queen. I think we had the image of Drogon flying over King's Landing in Bran's vision in season 6. Then we had Daenerys' vision in the House of Undead in season 2. And I thought, for the longest time, I thought that was snow that we saw. Maybe it's actually the ashes now. And I just feel like there are many moments that have been building up to this. Did I like her becoming the Mad Queen after all this development? Not necessarily, but it's not a surprise, because I think there are a lot of people out there who are saying it doesn't make any sense. That this was not the plan. But I do think there's some hints.
Yes. Now, Riley, did you know that whenever a Targaryen is born, a coin is flipped? And depending on how that coin lands, depends if they're going to be a mad king or queen or a good king or queen. Were you aware of that, Riley? And were you satisfied with, I guess, the foreshadowing to this turn of Daenerys?
I mean, they certainly told us a lot about the coin flip. And also the bells in this episode. They made sure that we were aware of all the references that they wanted us to be aware of. Luca, you talked about how maybe, it was just ashes there instead of snow. So I guess, another thing they've been telling us for the whole series, winter is coming. Maybe it's actually not coming. Maybe it will always be summer in King's Landing.
Oh, God.
As for whether this was appropriately foreshadowed, I mean, sure, they've been saying that she could become the Mad Queen for a while. And this is something I talked about last week, where people keep mentioning it. They keep saying she might become the Mad Queen. Well, they say it more eloquently than that, but they have been talking about it, kind of dropping hints. But I think that has been in conflict the whole time with what we've actually seen from Daenerys. Sure, she has the occasional outburst or makes the kind of irrational decision where she'll kill a few people. But there's a big difference between, killing a few people and then that's collateral damage, and just going on this nonstop rampage and killing everyone. So that I don't think was appropriately foreshadowed.
Yeah.
And also just like even talking about how she's always saying like, I will take what is mine with fire and blood. Like people say a lot of things, you know, like I feel like in so many TV shows, they're always like, you know, if I see you again, you're dead. But they don't really mean it, you know.
Depends on the show.
They actually, yeah. And if they do mean it, then that's like a huge thing, you know. And then they have to grapple with the consequences and, you know, how they feel about becoming a murderer. So Daenerys, you know, when she says like, I will take what is mine with fire and blood, like it's one thing to talk about it and not really act on it for 7 seasons. And then one day just to lose it and kill everybody, you know, all these civilians, women and children. So I feel like the showrunners, you know, they had kind of a tall order in foreshadowing her descent into madness, but I think that's fitting given what actually transpired. And so I wouldn't say that they set it up properly.
We can go all the way back to season 1 and the discussion about with Robert Baratheon and Ned Stark all going, should we just assassinate Daenerys Targaryen? She's down there. Should we kill her? And Ned Stark was a big advocate. She is a young girl. We shouldn't blame her for what her father did, yada, yada, yada. And I feel like almost like a lot of those decisions that they made have now been like a bit, I'm not saying they were the wrong decisions, like, but it's also, I feel like it's sort of invalidated a bit like that whole line of argument that there'd be like, where you sort of like, oh yeah, Ned Stark's right. Like it's sort of, they should have just killed her in season 1. Look at all the trouble she's caused now. But that being said, Cersei was not a good queen either. So it was a bit of a battle of two evils.
I was a little confused in this episode though. Like, do the people of King's Landing, do they know that Cersei's not a good leader? I mean, she did blow up the steps at one point, but I'm not sure how much they know that she was involved in that. It seems to me like the general people of King's Landing are just kind of going about their business, and then one day they just, you know, receive fire from above.
Yeah, that's a very good question.
I think, we never really figured out what the general public sort of take was on Cersei, on the Sept explosion, and all of a sudden, the mother of the king who had no claim to the throne whatsoever, just all of a sudden starts ruling. Like, I feel like questions would normally be asked, hey, really interesting that the mother of the king was about to be tried for incest. She misses the public court appearing. The church then blows up and kills everyone that was going to prosecute her. Her son then kills himself, and now she's just the queen of everything. So that is an interesting point, Riley. Like, what actually did they think of Cersei? I feel like whether it was positive or negative, conversations would have been had. It would have been quite interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, like, normally Daenerys is liberating people. You know, she's freeing slaves and that kind of thing. Whereas the King's Landing people, they don't seem to be enslaved.
Yeah, that's fair. I think it's very interesting. I feel like it was off-brand for Daenerys. I do not feel like this was an earned character moment for her. And I thought last week where I didn't necessarily like where I thought they were going, but I thought Daenerys is going to be put in a tricky position where she's going to have to make a choice about sort of doing something horrible to get the throne or sort of doing the right thing and not getting the throne sort of thing. Yeah. I thought that was when she was going to make the wrong call, I thought. Instead, they decided to go, hey, how about we have to make the choice between doing the right thing and getting the throne and not doing the right thing and getting the throne.
Yeah.
And it seemed like that should have been an easier choice for her.
I mean, in the after episode feature, they talked about the moment, where she's on her dragon and she's staring at the Red Keep and thinking about what she's going to do. And that her, going really mad was more of a spontaneous decision because she's sitting up there and she's all alone. She's practically lost everything. She doesn't have anything on her side anymore. and that's how they tried to reason her decision. But there's no coming back for her. There's no redeeming herself. I heard people talking about that she might redeem herself in the finale. There's no way. She crossed the line, and she's gonna lose everyone around her, which will be the next episode. Will be how the others react.
Yeah,
but
I
even
think
like a spontaneous decision, where she decides that she's going to bring the fire down on the people, but then she carries through on it for like the next hour. Like the episode seemed to be, roughly in real time, and she didn't let up. And I also thought it was very interesting how there's that moment, when she turns, where she's looking at the Red Keep or wherever Cersei was, and ultimately she never goes there. Like her one target is Cersei, and she kind of kills everybody else. At no point does Cersei come face to face with the dragon. Cersei actually escapes, and her body will never be recovered. So she had, kind of one object of her rage that, she was planning to take out, and instead she took out everybody else and ignored that one target.
Yeah, even if you want to torch the city and kill all the civilians, I would suggest going for Cersei first. You can always come back. They're not going anywhere. You're just giving Cersei an opportunity to escape. And I'm not sure if it's like, again, I guess if it's in the heat of the moment, excuse the pun, maybe she's not thinking about strategy and what's the most strategic thing.
And talking about, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, so we talked a bit about Daenerys and breaking that all down. Obviously, this was the end of Cersei Lannister's reign on the show. Lena Headey's last performance, I imagine, unless there's flashbacks in the final, but I don't think there will be. Luca, I know you're a big fan of Lena Headey's performance. Yeah. How do you think her arc closed out? Were you satisfied, or what do you think?
I was very dissatisfied with the way she died because, we're talking about the big villain of the show. She's in my opinion, one of the best written villains I've seen on television in a long time. And for me, it was a very disappointing way to see her go. I mean, she was hit by rocks. That's not an epic way for such a huge villain to die. And what bothered me even more is the war strategy. I mean, what was she thinking? She knew that Daenerys had a dragon. She knew that she had an army, and Cersei's army was gone within a millisecond. It just didn't feel like the person who blew up the Sept of Baelor. And Cersei's entire arc this season has been very disappointing. Lena Headey has not had a lot of screen time. I'm just glad she had 2 good scenes in this episode that, will get her that Emmy nomination. But I don't know if it's enough for her to win, which, really, really disappoints me. Because I think she's very deserving, but I don't know if she has enough screen time.
Yeah, it's very interesting that she looked like she didn't get the best edit, like where she's like, "Oh, I'm sorry." She's like, "Oh, that my people will die, like fighting for me," and then like 3 minutes later, the bells ring.
Exactly. That's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, she didn't have the best strategy. Riley, what do you think about how they closed out that arc, but also Lena's Emmy chances?
Well, just to touch on the bells there, like, were you guys kind of wondering, like, who's ringing those bells? Because Cersei doesn't tell anybody to ring bells, and I'm like, she's nowhere close to them. Who's in charge of that decision? But I don't know. Just
I guess just whoever gets to the bells, just anyone's allowed to surrender. But the city like someone just get to the bells. If anyone rings the bell, with forfeited. I did think with all the talk about the bells that they might have had a Cersei sort of rings the bells as a trick to make but no, that's not where they went at all.
Yeah, it's strange. Cersei seemed to have kind of no tricks up her sleeve.
No. Yeah, exactly.
On the one hand, she had all those scorpions, which I don't know if that's a real term, but they were, all positioned to fire at Drogon. And, as we saw last week, they, shot a couple arrows, took out a dragon very easily. This week, they seemed kind of ill-prepared. I feel like they weren't facing the right way or something, even though everybody was manning them and they were all ready to kind of fire at the same time. So on the one hand, I feel like that was sufficient strategy for Cersei, since it had proved to work so well in the past. Maybe she didn't anticipate this week that Drogon would be able to dodge all the arrows. So that's kind of fair, because you don't really know which way the plot's going to go. On the other hand, Cersei had very little screen time this season, and very little dialogue too. Most of the time, she was just standing there staring, often half smirking. So that was kind of disappointing. But I do think that her material in this episode was very powerful, and I think that Lena Headey could contend for the win with it.
I hope so.
Yeah, I think it was good from Lena Headey. I think it was powerful. I don't think it's the best work she's done on the show. I don't think that was the most she's been given or anything like that. But we've seen. I think we've seen worse we've seen worse performances win. I don't think actors always win for their absolute best season on a show anyway. So I think if they want to give it to her, she's been the most nominated actress on that show. I guess outside of
Peter Dinklage.
Diana Rigg. Diana Rigg.
Okay.
Yeah. The most nominated outside Diana Rigg. So they obviously like her, and they might want to. And she was this great villain and had a nice closing scene. So I think she might have a shot at winning the Emmy. It's going to be interesting because I do think Maisie Williams has been given more to do this season. So if a Game of Thrones actress wins, it'll be interesting to see whether they go with Maisie Williams, who had probably, I'd say, the bigger season, or they go with the actress that they've respected more for longer on the show.
Yeah. And this was a very... Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, and it'll be interesting to see, maybe it'll depend a bit on how things close out for Arya Stark next week as well.
That's true. I mean, this episode was very, she gave a very subtle performance in the episode. I mean, Maisie Williams did, because, she didn't have a lot of dialogue, but we saw her in a great portion of the episode, trying to escape out of try to escape King's Landing. And even in those scenes, I think she was very good. I think some of the best acting on this show is the subtle acting, which I think Lena Headey is, she does incredible subtle acting.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I do think we've had, how much of Maisie Williams have we had just like running away from things this season? Like
an hour.
Right, Riley, if you had to say, if one of the Game of Thrones actresses was winning the Emmy this year, would you say Maisie Williams or Lena Headey at this stage?
Definitely Lena Headey. I feel like Maisie Williams, a lot of the time, she is just running, or she's stabbing people. Whereas Cersei, because she has so little to do, she really has to try to make the most of it, where Lena Headey, I feel like, is acting the whole time, whereas maybe Arya has kind of more important physical things to be doing. So we don't really see her performance as much, or maybe it's not at the forefront. I'm very curious to see next week what kind of material Sophie Turner gets, because she wasn't in this episode. And, there are a lot of people who are not coming back next week. So she should theoretically, benefit from that. And we'll see how much she's in opposition to Daenerys and how much material that gives her. I was very impressed by Emilia Clarke in this episode, even if I didn't really like Daenerys' arc. I mean, that one moment where she turns and it's the last time we see her. At the time, I was just thinking that she was kind of looking like that just because she was so overcome with emotion. She had been working 7 seasons toward this goal. And, she doesn't really know what to think at that time, a lot of conflicting emotions. It turned out she was just going crazy, but I enjoyed my initial reading of that performance.
Yeah. I think she was better last week. I think she was better last week, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like if I was recommending a tape, I'd say last week's episode might be the one. But yeah, I think Emilia Clarke has, I think, been given a lot to do this season, and she's being a lot's being asked of her, not just in terms of screen time, but just her character is making a very quick turn, which is which would be challenging. So she's doing a really good job with that. Obviously, Nikolai Coster-Waldau's last episode as well on the series is Jaime Lannister. Does he have any Emmy hopes for a nomination or even upsetting Peter Dinklage?
I don't think he'll upset Peter Dinklage, because Peter Dinklage also, this is he could submit this episode. He was incredible. But I do think Nikolai is definitely getting nominated, especially in that weak drama supporting actor field. But I just can't imagine anyone beating Peter Dinklage at this moment. I'm just curious to see if Nikolai submits this episode or if he submits the second episode.
What do you think,
think
Riley?
that'll be very interesting to see.
Yeah. What do you think, Riley?
Yeah, I think Nikolai Coster-Waldau was a bit more evenly matched with Peter Dinklage last year, where I don't really remember what Tyrion did, whereas at least Nikolai Coster-Waldau had the Spoils of War episode where he was kind of charging for the dragon, and that was more Jaime-centric. I do think that this episode is what he needed to secure a nomination, kind of. I was feeling a little shaky after that Brienne storyline last week. But this week, he gets to die, and he knows he's dying, and he gets to reunite with the woman he loves, and all that kind of stuff I thought was very good material for him. Peter Dinklage, though, has been getting a lot of material. I actually saw a screen time breakdown where he actually has the most screen time out of anybody this season, which is not really what I expected.
Oh.
More than Jon Snow and Emilia Clarke. Tyrion himself is kind of a fool, which I don't understand. I thought that he was this kind of cunning strategist, at least he was in the first couple seasons. This year and last season, he just seems to make one bad decision after another, and people, I guess he has enough goodwill from the first couple seasons that people still think that he's clever or something. So I don't know what they're doing with his character, but Peter Dinklage is getting a lot to do.
He peaked in season 2, that character, in terms of smarts and Daenerys for probably peaked in season 3 when she was freeing all those slaves.
Yes, absolutely.
And they're both coming up a bit short in this final season. We also had the killing of Varys, which I think didn't reflect well on Daenerys, obviously, but I think, boy, the way just everyone just stood there and watched that happen, I think, was a bit of an indictment on their approach to things. That scene reminded me of the scene last season where she kills Sam's father and brother. And I know the actor who plays Varys, I don't know his name, he did not like the way his character died. So it was at the beginning of the episode. I almost forgot about it, to be honest. Yeah, I just remembered it then.
What?
Riley?
Like what were Varys's crimes? I was confused about that, because we saw him
treason.
Treason.
Like we saw him writing the letters, but did he actually send any? It seemed like somehow Daenerys already knew.
He talked. Tyrion told Daenerys that he'd betrayed her.
But Tyrion told Varys, and then I'm not sure Varys told anybody. But then because he had the knowledge, then he was.
He had discussed with Tyrion making moves against Daenerys.
Okay.
Treason.
Yeah, I was very confused. Yeah.
I would not have killed him. I'm not trying to justify the decision. But I think that's where she was coming from. She's discussing removing the queen is treason.
Yes.
Fair enough.
And she did approach Jon Snow. I don't think Jon Snow told her anything, but his discussion with Jon Snow, I think she would think will constitute treason as well.
Yes.
Saying, you're the good side of the coin, buddy. You need to be king.
Yeah. And then the other death we had, we had, the Clegane Bowl that we've been waiting for.
Oh, yes.
Many seasons.
This was one of the more satisfying parts of the episode. Yeah. I felt the Mountain went to his good old tried and true eye gouge or eye push or whatever it is move.
Yeah.
Throwback. And then they just... I didn't mind them both. You knew the Hound wasn't going to make it out of there. I sort of had in my head, maybe the Mountain kills the Hound and then Arya just jumps out of nowhere and kills him or something. But yeah, I thought it was pretty good.
And I like how they fell into the fire, which is for the Hound is kind of bittersweet. Bitter actually only, but. I was more satisfied with that moment, compared to Cersei's and Jaime's death. I thought that was I was fine with that ending for them.
No, I like that. What do we think about the show's drama series prospects? I know a couple of weeks ago we thought that Game of Thrones was sort of in a very comfortable spot out front in the drama series race at the Emmys. It is a very what was I going to say? I think it's still very. I think it's probably still in that front position, but there has been quite a polarizing online response to these last couple of episodes. Is that weakened it, Riley?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I've just been really surprised the last couple of weeks how much venom there is toward the internet. I mean, people going after David Benioff's past political whatever. Yeah, people are ruthless, and the critics are kind of turning on it more than the general fans. I mean, this episode was definitely the lowest rated of the show on Rotten Tomatoes. On IMDb, it wasn't, but the critics are getting fed up, and it's always hard to tell where the industry lies between the general public and the critics. Sometimes they kind of lean more one way or lean more the other way. Usually they're somewhere in the middle, but we have seen, not necessarily Emmy voters, but we have seen people like Jessica Chastain or Megan Ellison or Ava DuVernay tweeting negatively about the show, which is interesting because normally, kind of to keep things professional and support people in the industry, you don't really disparage shows like that or people. But it's becoming so mainstream to hate on Game of Thrones that they feel comfortable doing that, I guess. So yeah, I've been kind of looking for an alternative, not because I think that something else will win, but I'm beginning to consider it a bit more. I mean, especially if the finale does not turn out well, or if it's people respond negatively to it, which actually seems to be quite likely at this point.
Yeah.
So I would say, but it's hard because all the other contenders, I think, even in a field without Game of Thrones, I feel like most of them would still somehow lose. I think the only show that could win is Bodyguard. But yeah, we'll see if that one even gets nominated. I am definitely moving Game of Thrones down in my writing and directing predictions. Writing, it seems it'll still get nominated easily just because they're only submitting one, and most shows tend to do that. But in directing, I'm not sure that David Benioff and D.B. Weiss can get nominated for the finale. We have seen the director's branch occasionally respond poorly to writers or actors coming over into their field. And they're kind of the source of all that, or all the hate right now is directed toward them. I also think it's interesting because I expect that David Nutter will submit last week's episode, which was very poorly received, and I expect Miguel Sapochnik will. Well, it doesn't really matter whether he submits A Long Night or The Bells. Both of them were generated a lot of backlash. So I don't think they have a winning entry in either writing or directing. I think those are categories that, are out of their hands at this point.
Yeah. I think it'll be interesting to see how the how much of the internet fan reaction translates into industry. Like, will they see The Long Night as, oh yeah, fans hated it because they couldn't see stuff and Arya's thing didn't make sense? Or will it be this was such a directorial achievement and something that's never been done before in television? So I could see them landing either way, to be honest. Luca, what do you just think about the drama series chances?
Well, the problem with the drama series race is really that I don't know who would win if it wasn't Game of Thrones, and I just can't get over the fact that the competition is so weak. It's not it's not a lock like it was in previous years, like in seasons, in season 6, for example, but it's just so far ahead, in my opinion, because of the competition.
Yeah, well, and just to be watching, so Handmaid's Tale, Stranger Things, and The Crown are all sitting out this year at the Emmys. They're not airing any new eligible episomes. They're three of the past nominees. And Westworld,
Big Little Lies,
Big Little
Lies,
yeah.
which, and the Americans ended last season. So if I had to say what the spoiler would be, I'm not sure if this is what I would say close to the Emmys, but at the moment I'd say Better Call Saul, just because it is the show that has been consistently nominated in that category. I know that doesn't always translate to wins, but I feel like that's a more at least known entity at the Emmys than The Bodyguard or a newer show. But yeah, that's what I go with at the moment. But I'm like you guys, struggling to think through what that spoiler could be, because there is a vacuum in that category.
Yeah, I think
it's also tricky with nominations too, because
Yeah.
Like last year, we saw The Handmaid's Tale and Westworld get 20 plus nominations just because they had such visibility and they're impressive shows on a technical or acting level or whatever. But when it came down to it, in the end, when people were voting for wins, there was just no passion behind either of them. So I mean, I feel like there's no scenario in which Game of Thrones gets, it doesn't get 20 plus nominations, but that doesn't necessarily mean that all of them or even very many of them will translate to wins.
Yeah, that's fair.
And I think in the drama series race, the only one that I'm looking out for is Ozark, because I think the show's going to explode in a way that many people aren't expecting. I think it has a chance of winning 2 acting categories, in my opinion. I think Julia Garner is in a good position in supporting actress because she could benefit from a Game of Thrones vote split. And Jason Bateman, there seems to be a love fest for him in the industry, so he might just take home drama actor. And it did so well at the Guilds. But even then, it's not going to beat Game of Thrones. I'm just going to say that. It's like Riley said, there's no way it's not getting 20 plus nominations. And it won last year for, a season that's not as divisive as this one, but it won last year against some really strong competition.
I like how we've all got a different spoiler for Game of Thrones. I think that's cool. And if it, partly it makes me, if Game of Thrones is in a weakened position, it could make it for quite some interesting chats about the Emmys moving forward.
Yeah.
Any last thoughts on the Bells, guys? Riley?
I think I'm getting a little tired of stuff like where the Mountain will get stabbed in the eye and the brain, and he'll try to pull out the knife, or where Arya is standing next to some people who get burned to crisps, and she gets kind of dusty. I feel like the show's been leaning into that kind of stuff way too much in the last couple seasons.
Yeah. The plot armor is extremely annoying, but I'm just very curious to see how the show ends, because we've been with the show for 8 seasons now. It's almost been 1/3 of my life, so it's I mean, it's gonna be very interesting. I hope that I don't hate all of it. I hope there are some storylines that end in a very satisfying way. And I'm curious to see what happens to Daenerys, because there are a lot of rumors floating out there, a lot of theories saying that she's going to be killed by Jon Snow, or maybe Arya kills her, or maybe some people even say Sansa might come and kill her, because there's been that tension that's been building up.
I wouldn't rule out. I wouldn't take Tyrion off the board either. To be honest, her hand of the king. His brother was a king's slayer. Maybe he will be a queen's slayer. And I think he has a lot of egg on his face after the last episode, the last 2 episodes, where he was very big on, well, I believe in her. She's going to make the right decision. So he would be as disillusioned as anyone in what happened.
Yeah. And one other thing I wanted to say is that visually this episode was an absolute masterpiece. The visual effects, I don't think they've ever been better. I think the direction, after Miguel Sapochnik got a lot of flack, for the dark scenes and for some other directorial choices in The Long Night, I thought he nailed this one. I think the set design, the editing, the score, everything was amazing. The writing is what, kind of dragged it down.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm
curious to see next week if they're keeping things so close to the chest these days about what the title is and who's officially writing it or officially directing or what the episode description is. I hope that both David Benioff and Jan Weiss are credited as the directors, because the past couple times that they've directed, they've had to either be one or the other, just because of DGA rules that kind of prevented the Coen brothers from both being credited as directors for so long. So I wonder if they flipped a coin and only one of them is going to get the credit this year, or if the DGA has sorted out all that ridiculousness.
Well, when you're a Game of Thrones showrunner, when you flip a coin, you're either a director or not a director. What about last question? Who do we think, if there is an Iron Throne at the end of next episode, who is on the Iron Throne?
Oh my God. I have no idea. I honestly, at this point, it's not going to be Daenerys, that's for sure. I don't think she's not making it out alive.
Yes.
It's not going to be Jon Snow. He doesn't want the throne. I can't imagine him taking the throne. It could be one of the Stark sisters.
I hope it's one of the Stark sisters. These are the two characters that I feel like I can get behind in this last episode. I feel like a lot of other characters, like Daenerys, for her horrible decision in this episode, I'm out on her. I think Jon and Tyrion have been incompetent in all the proceedings. So I really hope one of the Stark girls ends out on top, actually. And I think probably Sansa's your more likely bet, just because she seems to have slightly more political ambitions than Arya.
Did the throne even survive all the fire? That's honestly what I was asking myself during the episode.
I think it will, because I think we're going to have a shot of if the throne got destroyed, we would have seen it. And I feel like we're going to have a shot of at least Daenerys looking at the throne, if not sitting on it at some point early in the episode.
Yeah, it has to be. Otherwise,
yeah. Riley, do you have a prediction who's going to end up on top next week?
Well, I better have a prediction. I mean, this is a predictions website. Video score. I like your Sansa theory that you were talking about, I think, last week. So I'll go with that.
Yeah.
Okay. Sweet. Love it. I think I did see an article title with someone fan theorizing about that. Like, I guess everyone's had a theory about everyone being on the throne. I guess, like, I don't need to apologize that that's not an original prediction. Well, guys, thanks for talking Game of Thrones as always. You can follow Gold Derby and make your own predictions about Game of Thrones and awards and Emmys and all that sort of stuff, and subscribe to this video for not just some recaps like this, but also interviews with top award contenders and Hollywood stars. Thanks.